Happy Hanukkah, everyone. Just here to discuss Hanukkah a little bit. So first, again, Happy Hanukkah. I guess the first thing to really just mention clearly is what happened on Hanukkah. So obviously, if someone wants to study the history of Hanukkah, it's I'm sure it's really interesting. It's a really interesting area to study. There's a lot there. Just to go over quickly, basically, as the Greeks became the new empire, kind of pushed Persia out of the way. When Alexander came to Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, the Jews were able to get along with him, to the chagrin of the Samaritans, and as we know, the Persians and the Greeks kind of had a different way of doing things in terms of how they ran their empire, and the Greeks, deliberately were working on spreading their philosophies and their influences to a degree far greater than that of the Persians, and this was a whole different experience for the Jews. To be targeted by ideas instead of by the sword. And unfortunately, many Jews started getting influenced by Greek ideas and the ways of life. For example, the Greeks would have their sporting events, and they would all be naked at these events, and the Jews who wanted to go to those events and not be outed as being a Jew they did a really painful process that reverses their circumcision, so that nobody would be able to tell that they were Jewish, which kind of shows the degree of how much they wanted to be involved in Greek culture. Many people started having Greek names, and just the Greek idea spread throughout the land. And up until this point, the Jews had really only faced persecution via sword. I guess I wouldn't make an absolute statement like that, but for the most part, and this was different. Also, prophecy had ended, and this is really a big part of what I want to talk about. So prophecy had ended with Malachi, and so now there's no more prophecy, even though the Kohen Gadol still had the Urim V'Tumim. If he had it, it wasn't answering any questions. So the Jews are kind of now on their own, right? They got the Torah from Hashem. They've had prophets. They've had teachers, Moshe, Shmuel, Isaiah, Yirmiyahu, Yechezkel, Ezra, Malachi. Right? They had prophets. They were able to get updated. Not updated as in superseding prior instruction, but they were able to kind of keep in contact with Hashem, so to speak. But after Malachi, Malachi ends off, keep the Torah, and that's it. There's no more communications with Hashem in that way. So now the Jews are on their own, and they're facing this struggle, and it's not going well for them. And there's a lot of politics to learn here, but basically, push comes to shove, the Greeks are, for the different developments that happened, that were caused in no small part by the Messiavnim, who were the Hellenist Jews. The Greeks came to be targeting the Jewish religion, not Jewish lives. They if you would do what they wanted, they would have no problem with you. But they made certain decrees against different laws, different commandments, and the persecution was terrible. They outlawed bris milah, in various different commandments, and the persecution was terrible. There was a lot of religious persecution, and this episode really, and the persecution really has been built deep into the psyche of the modern Jewish person. The awareness of, they tried to take us away from our religion. Of course, there's a famous story of Hannah and her 7 sons who all gave their life and to not. Gave their life for the Torah, and in spite of the ruler trying to force them to to break the law, to break the Torah. And there are all these different stories of self-sacrifice and heroism that occurred. But ultimately, and again, this is occurring with the Jews in kind of a new state that they had no tradition of their elders being in it. A lot of what the Jews do, even today, is that, well, oh, this is happening. Well, we've been in this situation before. What did our teachers do then? How do we deal with it then? What lessons can we learn from that? This is a kind of a new situation. They can't. It's also not only is it new because of the Greek influence being a new concept compared to prior influences like you had when they moved into Eretz Yisrael, but also there's no way to speak to Hashem. There's no way to figure out okay, well, ask the Navi what to do. That's what it was in the olden days. You would, you had a question, you would go ask the prophet what to do. To a certain extent, of course, there was still a Sanhedrin and we still had all that, but there was also a Navi helping out versus now there was no such thing. And so the way the Hanukkah story started, of course, there's a lot of different stories and things that go into this, but the basic idea is that Matisyahu, who was a Kohen, and his 5 sons started a rebellion in a village in Israel against the Greeks, and basically, even though the Greek Empire at that time, even though Alexander's kingdom had split into 4, they were still the vaunted military in the world, and to go against them was kind of foolhardy, especially if you weren't a trained army, you didn't have a lot of numbers, which is what the situation was for the Jews. And not only so the idea of this rebellion was for what they call the Maccabees, who were Matisyahu and his 5 kids. Matisyahu passed away, and then his 5 kids took over. Was that they were going to try. They were going to try, even though on paper, military analysts probably would, not probably, for sure would predict their loss. They were going to try anyways. Instead of, just letting the Greeks slowly, either completely corrupt the people or kill them out for not doing what they want, not violating the Torah, they were going to fight back. But the idea was not to fight back to get the Greeks off the land. The idea was to fight back to enable them to practice their religion. And so the idea here though is that they're doing Mesiras Nefesh, they're doing self-sacrifice, even though maybe it doesn't make so much sense, right? But they're fighting, and interestingly, so of course the amazing miracles, how they were able to defeat the Greeks with much smaller numbers and much not trained. The Greeks at the time had elephants, they had the phalanx. The Maccabees didn't have that. And of course, they did their best. They tried to make use of whatever military tactics they could use that was available to them, but still it was a very improbable victory, and really very, very clear to everyone that Hashem was really helping them out. But it's funny that we light the menorah to celebrate a different miracle. So after they were able to defeat the Greeks in multiple battles, they came to Jerusalem and they were able to evict the Greeks and the Jewish Hellenists and idolaters from the temple. And in the process of restoring the Beis HaMikdash and bringing it back to the service of Hashem, they needed to light the menorah. And they found 1 jug of oil that was sealed with the Kohen Gadol seal, as they were looking for oil that was pure. That was there's various laws that goes into that, but they found a pure jug of oil. However, it only had oil that could keep the menorah alight for 1 day, and it would take I think it would take 8 days for them to get pure oil, but they just lit it on the first day again. I see a concept here where we don't know, we're not going to be able to keep this up for 8 days, but we'll just do it today. We'll do what we can right now, disregarding the future, how it's going to work, what the outcome is going to be. We're going to just do what's in our power to do right now. And they did it, and supernaturally the light stayed lit for 8 days. So it's interesting because at this time, a lot of the supernatural miracles that we saw in the first temple did not transfer to the second temple. Prophecy had stopped. So kind of interestingly, we see like a reversion almost to like the first temple situation where they get a supernatural miracle, right? The miracle of the Purim story, that wasn't supernatural. That was just how we could see Hashem arranging things, right? A miracle of a military victory, as much as it was improbable, was still working with the laws of nature. So, but after all their self-sacrifice, and this wasn't like for the whole land. You had to be there in the temple. And who was there? The Hashmonaim, these people who made this decision to fight, they get an open miracle to their face, kind of like the way I kind of see it. It's kind of like a message from Hashem of like, this is a throwback to what the type of miracles the Jews used to get. So it's like a confirmation almost. That's kind of the reason why we light the menorahs for those. It's for the miracle of the light staying lit for 8 days. Of course, there's so much more to go into here, but this is just the basic history. I think that one of the things very important is that although this is a Jewish holiday, Noachide should also celebrate it because, this is the continuation of the testimony of the Jews surviving until today. If there's no observant Jewish nation, there's nobody today that's finding Hashem. And God forbid, obviously we know that Hashem promised that the Jews will never be forsaken. But this is one of those episodes where it really came down to the wire. And the miracle of the Jewish survival, which is something that everyone should be celebrating, Hanukkah definitely stands out because, this is really like a point in time where we were just placed in this situation where we really weren't placed in that situation before, and we were able to not only survive but grow from it. And really what it's about is the lack of reliance on revelation, seeing it with your own eyes, and it's reliance on the tradition, on the Menorah, where we don't have any more revelation. There's no more prophets. There's no more open miracles happening left and right. But still, the Maccabees, they just rely on their tradition, their Torah, and to do what it says in it without having any open miracles and Eliyahu and Navi bringing down a fire in Har Carmel. And that's how the Jewish nation has been ever since. Right? We've been going according to what our teachers tell us. We were also doing this before. Don't get me wrong. I'm not arguing here for such a heretical notion. But here's where we were left with only this, and many Jews faltered. They didn't keep going with the traditions when they didn't have all these miraculous events in front of their eyes. The Maccabees were able to stick on point with the Torah and the Menorah and the traditions, and which is what has been the continuance for all Jews today. So you could kind of look at the Hanukkah story as really the growth. I don't know, the growth is a bad word, but basically you kind of look at the Hanukkah story as where modern day Judaism kind of gets revitalized after the departure of prophecy. So number one, I think it's very important for Noachides because Noachides wouldn't be able to find Hashem if not for the Jews today, and there would be no Jews today, and there would be no Torah around if not for the Hanukkah story. And second of all, we see, and this message is for Jews and Noachides, we see kind of the self-sacrifice relying on just the teachings, which is kind of also similar to Avraham Avinu, where he let himself get killed without any prophecy, without any revelation. He didn't see Hashem, he didn't meet Hashem. He just arrived at the understanding of Hashem through his own logic and philosophy, and he was willing to die for that. And the same thing, the Maccabees, they had no access to prophecy. They didn't see miracles left and right, but they were willing to die for their belief in their traditions. So you see very much we're going, you have a Avinu, then you have a lot of revelation. Now we're going straight back to the same place where there's self-sacrifice without revelation. And I think that's something that, Judaism today doesn't have revelation. Of course, I'm not denying ever you could see a lot of miraculous things going on, but on the main, we don't have a lot of ongoing revelation. There's no prophets that you could call on a 1-800 number, and this is really the strength of this really is borne out by Hanukkah. Anyway, have a happy Hanukkah, everyone.